Welcome back to the Mackem in the Middle podcast. Another Sunderland game last night away to Huddersfield Town, a team that were bottom of the league and obviously still are, I believe, after a 2-0 win for Sunderland. Goals from Alex Pritchard, his first of the season. Of course, Amad Diallo in the 96th minute as well. And as always, we'll get into everything that happened during the game, the goals, the subs, team news, and a brief look ahead to Saturday's game, which is the last home game before the World Cup. Of course, Cardiff at home on that one. First and foremost, John, it's a win. First win since Wigan, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So people looked at that Luton game and thought, yeah, it was a decent point. But like Michael said after the podcast, after that game, that was only a decent point if we got the 3 points yesterday, which we did.
Yeah, we did. I think it was a bit of a relief. Like you said, I think we needed it. I don't think the performances, maybe second half Burnley aside, have warranted maybe not winning a game. So it's nice to get that result under our belt, and it maybe relieves I wouldn't say pressure, but sort of that maybe monkey on the back of just getting a win, keep ticking along, because as we know we're sort of stumbling towards the international break where we know we can get a lot of our good squad players back. And then obviously second half of the season have a really good fight at it. But yeah, result matters. Obviously performance we'll probably get into a little bit more in depth. Probably we can write that one off, but we'll take the 3 points.
Yeah, and we'll get on to performance now, in fact, Michael, because 3 points, which is all that matters in any game really at any point in the season. But in all honesty, the performance was not great, to be generous.
Yeah, I think meh was kind of the way to describe it in some parts. I think as you guys know, I'm probably trying to be one of the most glasses half full people around, but even I admitted the first half was just dire. I mean, we had, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Dennis Serkin had 2 good chances. He had at least one of them, because we created 2 chances, and we had a chance in the penalty area on the left-hand side, which we should put at least 2 of them. And Serkin had at least one of them.
with that one. Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, there you go. Just shows to how I'll blame the fact we were far away the other side of the ground.
Yeah.
But the first half in general was just poor. I mean, that was from both teams, not just Sunderland. Huddersfield had a little bit more spells of pressure, I suppose, but not really doing overly that much. So, the first half wasn't particularly great. But Tony Mowbray said it himself that and like John's alluded to, we've played better in games and lost them or drawn them. So It's nice for once to be the other way around. And he said himself, he knows we can play better than that. But like John said, the main thing last night was the result, and it was needed.
Yeah. Obviously, one thing that people always notice, John, is that Sunderland are at the best when they move the ball quickly. They play the one-touch passing, and obviously we'll get on to the first goal, but essentially that's what it came from. We move the ball up the pitch quick, little 1-2 between the 2 wide players, and we end up scoring from it. But that first half, there just seemed to be no intensity, no kind of desire to go forward with the ball, look for that through ball. Everything from both teams really was just backwards, sideways, possession with no intent whatsoever.
Yeah, I think everything about the first half was horrible, including the weather. It just seemed to be a very passive game. I think we like to go to a team's away from home and maybe let them attack us, and maybe we could pick them off. I think you certainly saw that second half, but first half, very much, it was they sort of played a defensive 4-5-1 when we had the ball and just let our centre backs have the ball, and we didn't really have anyone sort of dropping in and, like a Dan Neil sort of dropping in on the spin, or Embleton doing it to win it with any effect and spinning in with the ball. Eventually we got the ball to Patrick Roberts, and, he was marked by their 15 right backs that they managed to put on him. So he just never got anywhere in the game. And, probably 10 minutes into the second half was probably the same. And, to be fair, I thought Huddersfield were an awful team. I thought if we even went up one gear, I think we did, sort of second half when we scored the first goal, which was sort of Reading-esque, wasn't it? Seeing it back today, and you just know if we can just ramp it up that 1 or 2 gears, we've got the footballing ability to, put teams to the sword, and I think a lot of it sort of recently we've gone sort of 1 or 2-0 down, and then we've been able to then control the game, which at the moment, we want it to be the other way. Obviously, we wanted Sims on, plays a part in the goal, and then we go 1-0 up. We then bring on, Bar, Matete and Dan Neil, and then we do actually control the game. And then obviously we managed to control it out and then hit teams, on the counter like we saw. So it's having that balance. But that's definitely what we saw yesterday.
Yeah. And on that first goal, Michael, like we said, we moved the ball quickly. It was one pass from the back, and very similar to the Reading goal. I think it started from a goal kick. Patterson just, plays it out short. And we did that in the first half a lot. But instead of looking for that pass through the midfield, it would go from Bart to right to O'Nien, probably back to Patterson up the pitch. We'd lose it because we had no one up front to win it. And I think bar Luke O'Nien, who had the most touches for Sunderland last night, it was barely right that actually had 87 touches of the ball, which is, I think, was about 15 or 20 touches more than anyone else in that Sunderland team. I think a lot of that was down to the first half. But on that goal, we moved the ball up pitch quickly. Pritchard involved again, kind of like that little pre-assist, and obviously he got the goal. Roberts and Diallo link up well, one-touch passing movement, quick on the ball. Ball comes into Pritchard, finishes it up 1-0, and it's usually Sunderland that concede to ex-players. So it was nice to be on the scoring end this time, and not just for the fans, but I imagine for Alex Pritchard as well, because you've heard it in his interviews. He knows he needs to do better. He wants to do better, and I couldn't have imagined the team that he wanted to score against most.
Nor could I. Well, obviously for them, it was at the game. I don't know whether because I think the game was on the red button, wasn't it? So there's only one camera angle. So in that sense, it probably wouldn't have captured the best. What's the one I'm looking for? The best side of the atmosphere. But inside the stadium last night, the Huddersfield fans were literally giving Pritchard stick. Persistent booing every time he touched the ball, jeering whenever he fell over or had a free kick given against him, whatever it was. So yes, the fact that we've had this so many times where we booed ex-players, and even when we've been at home at the Stadium of Light, I've always said, don't do that because it'll just entice them to go and score. And then Huddersfield fans were doing it. I was like, oh, go on then, but I'm telling you, he'll score if you keep doing it. And then obviously we know who had the last laugh. You probably saw after he scored, Pritchard went over to a section of the stadium where it was giving him the most stick and just cupped and pointed his fingers to his ears. So, which was just, for once, it was just so satisfying for it not to be happening to us. But yeah, it was. He knows himself. He needs to do better. And obviously, if this isn't going to get his confidence going, then I don't know what will.
Yeah, and obviously that goal, John, was scored when Ellis Sims had came on. Obviously, he came on for half-time for Leon Diaku. He plays so much better when he has a striker in front of him. You can link off him, you can play the ball to him, and you kind of make that running behind. And I think that is when Pritchard will be at his best, when he has got Sims after the World Cup, when he's got Stewart as well to play off. And you could sense that because of the way that, the movement, the thought of playing that forward pass to get the ball back off him. Everything was there that, in all honesty, he's probably been missing for the last few weeks in Pritchard.
Yeah, I think he's one of the ones, obviously, who's suffered, and I think he did allude to it in his interview, and I've seen him say it previously as well. Some of these players are going to struggle without that big physical presence up there, and you wouldn't have said that. Ellis Sims was a massive goal threat yesterday, but just to drop in, hold the defender off, because their defenders had sort of the freedom of Huddersfield. First half with, the pressing was poor and those types of things, and no real sort of strong figure up there. So as soon as he comes on, he gives them something to think of. Ultimately holds the ball up fantastically, which I don't think would happen if he, with any other player, holds that. Ball up, zips it round, and then, like you say, we score an absolutely fantastic goal. And those are the dimensions, that you want in a team that we didn't have first half. And, Pritchard will only flourish in that. Like Michael said, the stick he was getting, that's only going to G him up. We've seen that, to a lesser extent with, sort of Chris Maguire in League One when he sort of turned up and, tore us to shreds, after he got a bit of a reaction. And it's massively needed, I think, for Pritchard. You saw just after that, he was getting stuck in, he was keeping the ball, he was sharp, and maybe just needed that little bit of a boost, because a lot of people have been calling for, myself included, if he was dropped, you couldn't really argue, and I don't think he could either. So hopefully this is a springboard. But yeah, definitely with the strikers, coming back and that physical presence, that then enhances his game.
Yeah. And obviously after that goal, Michael, we did make subs, like John alluded to a little bit earlier. Abdullah Bar came on, Matete came on, Dan Neil came on, and we kind of, I suppose, proactive in the decisions that we made and the
Yeah.
decisions that Tony Mowbray made. Whereas in previous games, has he been more proactive or has he been reactive? Some people would probably err on the second one. But on this occasion, we go 1-0 up. We've seen so many times that we haven't been able to manage games. But the introduction of Bar, Dan Neil, like I say, Jay Matete as well. And I think Corby Evans was on the pitch while some of them were on as well. The game management was a lot better after we went 1-0 up.
That's the perfect way to sum it up. I mean, even though we went 1-0 up, and I think we were slightly better, a little bit more threatening in the second half, with Sim being the focal point, I still didn't feel we were really getting to grips with the game and controlling it as much as what we could have done. And I think those substitutions that you just mentioned right there, I think allowed us to try and almost do something as simple as calm the game down and slow it down, because that suited us at that point. We were 1-0 up. Huddersfield had to come out and try and attack us. So it meant that we could just keep them at arm's length, it would keep them at bay, frustrate the crowd, and really just try and get on top of it. And although I think Huddersfield probably in the second, I mean, we had a big chance before, they had a big chance right before we took the lead, in fairness. But that aside, after those subs came on, I think Huddersfield were probably restricted to hopeful long-range efforts. Obviously, one or two of them went past the post, but I think that's a testament to how, on the whole, and as the game went on, the more control we actually had of it, thanks to those substitutions from Mowbray.
Yeah. And obviously, we managed the game well. I don't think Huddersfield really had any clear-cut chances in the game at all. It really, never mind the second half. And obviously, when you 1-0 up with such little time left, the opposition have to go for the game. And Huddersfield, for large parts, especially before we went 1-0 up, like John alluded to, they were compact. They had 5 in midfield. They were hard to break down. We go 1-0 up. Huddersfield have to come out of the shape a little bit, and they did. And that's exactly where the second goal comes from, John. We break. I think it's Jay Matete wins the ball initially. Bit of a miss kick, but they're straight to win the second ball. We break forward. Diallo plays it into Sims. And again, just having that vocal point there where he's going to be there, he can hold the ball up, plays it back to Diallo, and it's 2-0. And one thing that I think we are certainly seeing more of now is why Man United paid so much money for him. I think when he came to the club, he did lack confidence. You could tell that a little bit. He was a bit, not necessarily afraid, but I can't think of another word, so I'm going to go with it. But afraid to shoot at times. I can't remember which game it was, but that one where he's in the box, he dribbled past 3 players, just didn't want to take a shot. Whereas now, he's so good on the ball. He can drop deep, pick the ball up, get us up the pitch, and if he's going to chip in with a few goals even there, when we've got Stewart back, obviously we've got a few other players that will score. That's only going to bode well.
Yeah, definitely. He's one of those ones that massively come out of his shell. Obviously, you never know the background. You sort of think because Man United have spent so much money on him, you just think he's sort of, a polished, superstar who's just confident in everything he does, and that's not always the case. He seems to be really, really happy here. Obviously, we saw him dancing yesterday on the videos. He's playing with other youngsters who who will give him confidence as well. But he's to me, when he is on form, he looks sort of, a very accomplished player. He's very strong. He's very tenacious. He's got a fantastic touch, carrying the ball, and I don't think there's any chance of us, keeping him and that type of thing. But it just seems to have absolutely fit him coming here. And again, you could probably look, in that goal. Does it happen if Sims is on the pitch? I don't think it does. Sims holds the ball up, sort of fantastically well again. Whereas before that, on every corner and set piece, there's no one up there, and the ball literally just goes back to their centre back or whoever who just lumps it back. So it was nice of us to think, no, put someone up, take one of their players away, and I think that's where it comes from. And don't get me wrong, Diallo played fantastically, and I'm glad he scored. But I think a few questions might have to be asked from their goalkeeper, who just sort of, must be a massive Lads fan, because he sort of just lets it in.
So, he let it go under him, didn't he?
It just seemed to go through him. Just, I couldn't believe it, but we'll take it all day long, and we deserved it to score, I think.
Yeah. And obviously them 3 points, which obviously did finish 2-0, takes Sunderland up to 12th, Michael. Obviously 2 games left before the World Cup break, and, we could be in a completely different position by then. At the minute, there's just 5 points separating us from the bottom 3. But on the other hand, there's also just 5 points separating us from the
Yeah.
top six. So we are by every mean of the same mid-table, but even 12th, which is exactly mid-table. Couldn't probably be any more mid-table. 6 wins, 6 draws, 6 losses, just a bit of everything. The only thing that isn't 6 is the goal difference. So to consider the situation we've been in, again, not to go on about it too much, but the strikers, you've lost your right back, you've lost 2 of your centre backs. You've had Patrick Roberts missing for a game. To be where
Cirkin.
we are now, Sirkin as well, he was missing for a large
Yep.
part. You've been missing, so many players that would be starting games for us this season. To be where we are now, like I say, if you win the next 2 games, you could be in the playoffs. It's, it is a very good position to be in at this point.
Well, at the minute, the league's that tight. But you're right, with all the injuries we've had, I mean, I suppose as much as I've grown tired of the striker talk, it does beg the question if we had at least one of Stewart or Sims over this last 6 weeks, where we could have ended up being. But that's by the by now. And I think, to be fair, and this is where I've seen, and this is something I need to get off my chest. I've seen a few people before last night's game going on about comparing Tony Mowbray to Alex Neil. If you're going to make comparisons of the two of them, then wait and see when Tony Mowbray has what Alex Neil had. Alex Neil had Ross Stewart and Ellis Sims fit almost every game, whereas Tony Mowbray's managed a good majority of the games he's had without either of them. So, and even now we're only bringing Sims off the bench at the moment, which begs questions whether he needs to start games. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think where we are now is not that bad. And I think I've said all along, just get to the World Cup on a respectable points tally, get a bit of distance from the bottom 3. And then after the World Cup, when players start to come back, I think then you'll start to see much more of what we are capable of.
Yeah. Well, we will go into player ratings, and what we'll do is we'll take one player each. So, John, you can start with Anthony Patterson, who I can't remember having too much to do throughout the game.
I'll probably go over 7. I thought he was a lot more commanded in the area and coming out and rollicking his defenders as well, because obviously he was fairly busy. His distribution and footwork was good, albeit one hairy moment where your heart was in your mouth. And he made a fantastic save, just before we got at the other end and scored. So that's all you can ask for. So yeah, very good performance from me.
Yeah. On to Luke O'Nien. Michael obviously started right back, and I think Danny Collins gave him man of the match on the Sunderland stream. And spoiler ahead, I would also agree with that, but this is your choice.
I would say a good solid 7 as well. I think in the first half, he was easily our best player. And I know that's not saying much, but I think, honestly, the amount of last-ditch challenges he put in to block crosses and stop crosses when Huddersfield were getting joy down their left-hand side, I think was much more important than a lot of people will realise. And that, in turn, preserved the clean sheet at half-time. There's my favourite words again. And then second half, just slotted in at right back again very nicely. And I think was just very solid defensively, got forward when he could. Just a very good all-round, respectable performance. And I'm going to bump him up to an 8 just because of that that sliding celebration when we scored.
Yeah,
it's just worth it for that alone.
Isn't it?
It's great. Honestly, I didn't even see that until after the game, and I was like, how on earth have I not seen this? It's just great. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Yeah, typical Luke O'Nien, I think it's fair to say.
Without doubt.
Bailey Wright, John.
I'd probably go over 7. I thought he battled fairly well, dealt with their strikers fairly well. I thought it was quite a run of the mill. Like you said, he had a lot of touches, and he was actually one of the ones main in the second half, sort of trying to get the ball forward. Sort of instead of just sitting off 10 yards, and just sort of left, right, left. He was actually taking the ball to sort of find the gap. So yeah, I was quite impressed. 7.
Alongside him, Michael, Danny Bart, obviously it was his pass that kind of started that move for the first goal, and I think something that you would like to see a bit more of when we do have the ball between our 2 centre halves is just looking to get the ball up the pitch on the floor, get the ball moving and get us up the pitch quickly. He did that in the first goal, and like I said, that's how we scored. So Danny Bart for you?
Good solid 7. I think just again proves, as I said, I think I said this for Luton podcast as well, typical Danny Bart-esque performance where that's what we come to expect from him. Defensively, very solid for the most part, and started the move that led to the first goal, which is just exquisite. I will quickly say that made the long nightmare of a train journey down worth it. So thank you, Danny. Much appreciated.
And on the way home, I imagine.
Well, we got a lift back on the way home, thankfully, because the return train got cancelled. So, but we were very lucky, so grateful for that. But yeah, Danny Bart, as to a Danny Bart, good solid 7.
Yeah. Then a second onto you, John.
I'll probably be quite harsh here. I'll probably go for 5. He didn't impress me that much. Didn't really get forward in any way, and just seemed to always sort of turn back, almost like he was a bit nervous, and probably should have done better as well at the back post to score. So yeah, I'll give him a 5, unfortunately.
That is fair. Corey Evans, Michael.
6. There you go. 6 is back
The
again.
6s.
Yeah, there's always there's never a podcast I can't go with the 6. Yeah, 6 just kept it simple enough. I think tried to get an element of control, and I think as we grew in confidence, I think he sort of was able to what's the word I'm looking for? Hold the fort a little bit in midfield before the subs came on.
Yeah, it's fair. Alongside him in a kind of midfield too was Elliot Embleton, John.
Again, I'd probably go a 5. I wasn't that impressed. He did make one amazing block on the edge of the box, but he did a lot of other things that frustrated me, and didn't really get a foothold in the game where you'd expect to, whereas we were given so much time and space. So yeah, I'll go over 5.
Yeah. Patrick Roberts, Michael, obviously got the assist for the first goal.
I'd probably go with another 6. I think there were times that his decision making could have been a bit better. Certainly in the first half, there was one occasion when he had the ball and was dribbling with it for about 15 seconds, and could have had an option to pass onto it. But ultimately, got the all important first assist, which set us on our way. So yeah, I would say I wonder whether he was affected maybe by Clark not being on the pitch, because for me those two seem to link up really well. I know they're on opposite flanks, but they can interchange alongside each other. So I'll go with the 6. I think I've seen better games from him, but he ultimately did get an assist and help and contributed.
Yeah. Alex Pritchard, John, obviously got the goal that set us on the way.
It's quite a strange one. I'll probably go with a 7. Sort of first 55 minutes, it wasn't great at all. Got a bit frustrated, and it probably summed his first 55 minutes when sort of went down the wing and tried to cross it in and just swung and just absolutely landed on his back, and you're thinking, oh my god, this is just going to be one of those days. But to be fair, he got up, laughed it off, and played a hand in the goal that ultimately he finished off. Right place, right time, freed him in the 6-yard box, and a fantastic finish. And then after that, I thought it was a very, very, very good performance. So yeah, I'd probably bump him up to a 7, but the first 55, it's a bit of a frustrating one.
Yeah. Leon Diaku, Michael.
Oh, everyone's favourite player. Yeah, I've got to go with probably a 4. And I'm someone who I think a lot of people over-exaggerate how bad they think he is, but even I must admit he was a headless chicken in the first half. And I hate being harsh on the guy, but unfortunately he just doesn't seem like he's got it at this level. So I think I said it in the first half and at half time that Diaku had come off with Sims coming on. So I have nothing against the lad, but it just didn't work for him.
I think one of the worst decisions that Sunderland have made in the last kind of year or two is not giving him a loan.
I'd imagine I would be looking to loan him out in January, mind. Yeah. I'd be very, very simple.
I think he's a player that I think can become, a decent player. He's not going to go to the top of football and he's not going to go back to Bayern and start playing in the first team. But he's a player that at this level, I think, has the kind of the awareness, the, just like the football and kind of intelligence part of the game, but doesn't quite have the technical ability at the moment, which is probably the best way to put it. And I think the loan is exactly what he needs.
I think
he needs to get regular games for me. And I think weirdly enough, you could probably get someone who's a mid-table League One side or a side that wants a bit of technical flair in League One or even abroad again, that probably would take him for 6 months. But I would certainly loan him out in January. I think for his sake, he needs to move.
I think the worst decision is the obligation to buy when we were promoted. Obviously, those are things that we shouldn't.
That's the only reason we got him, wasn't it?
Yeah, we shouldn't have him in there because you could tell Alex Neil did not fancy him one little bit, and then you sign him in the summer and you're thinking, hang on a minute, and our budget's not going to be the biggest, and we've spent probably a sizable chunk of the budget, whereas what we're buying, what we're picking up sort of Abdullah Bar for, who could probably easily start every week, and we've spent probably as much, if not more, on signing Diaku, who sometimes doesn't even get in the squad. But now we have got him on a long-term deal, then like you say, he's got to go out in January, I think, to maybe a sort of high-end League One club and see what he can do.
I think it was
Agreed.
closer to $1 million that we paid for Diaku.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of money to us. Well, like you say, we're picking up Abdullah Bar, Jewison Bennett, and those types of players who seem much more ready, almost. Which sounds strange to say, considering he's been here for best part of 18 months nearly.
Yeah.
In his defence, he's probably being used out of position. If he was given, started on the wing for sort of 6 games, maybe we'd see a little bit different. But ultimately, he's not as good as Jack Clark. So it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And last but not least, John Ahmad obviously got the second goal.
Yeah. I'll probably go with a 7. I thought he was very good in parts. He just seems to be a very good, accomplished sort of central fielder, sort of dropping in, holding off the ball, turning, spinning.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's at the moment he's banging form.
Yeah. And last but not least, before we head off for this one, Michael, I'll go with you first. Score predictions for Saturday, home to Cardiff.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't got a manager at the minute, which is obviously quite interesting stuff. I think they sacked, I can't remember who it was that was there. Was it Steve Morrison, I think it was?
I think so.
Or
yeah.
Sean Morrison. I always get them
Like
confused. They sacked him, I think it was mid-September, and haven't replaced him. I said before the game that I thought it would be a draw. So my head is saying 1-1, but my heart is going to say 1-0 Sunderland, because I think at home, I've touched this before, we need to start winning more games at home.
Yeah, that's fair. John, last but not least.
Yeah, same. I'll take a 1-0 win. Any win will do, but I think it'll be tight because they're going to try and sit in for the point. But I think with sort of Clark having the week off, nice and refreshed at home, last home game before international break, I think we can. A lot of people are going to go, and the atmosphere will be decent. I think we can go ahead and win.
Yeah, that is fair. But of course, that's on Saturday, so we'll have another reaction out to that game on the Sunday before the last game of the break, I should say, which is of course Birmingham away next Saturday. But until next Sunday, we'll see you later.
That's all, folks.